engage their men in conversations that enlighten and challenge and confront. And I think that we all have a part to play in that.
Speaking of women engaging in conversations that enlighten and confront, yeah, we have enough time. Let's talk for a moment about Catherine Deneuve.
Who?
You got to be intersectional. You know that good French actress, Catherine Deneuve, who did a movie that I can't remember the name of.
Look,
back in the day.
I can't even say that word, so I know I don't know her.
I just love the way it rolls off the tongue. Deneuve.
Does it roll off?
No, it doesn't. I'm forcing. But the point is, Catherine Deneuve and 99 other French women said that Me Too is driven by hatred. I'm going to just read sections from the Reuters article in which Catherine Deneuve said, Oh, no, you're going to love this. Catherine Deneuve says that men are being unfairly targeted by sexual misconduct allegations, and she adds that the Me Too campaign basically amounts to Puritanism and is fueled by a hatred of men.
What does that mean, Puritanism?
What does that mean in this puritanical context? Roots of America, like just that whole, this is the way it should be, and this is the way a woman should be, and this is the way a man should be, which, if she is actually using the term correctly, she would not have said that, because in a truly puritanical sense, women would not be advocating for themselves. So right. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right.
Excuse me.
I'm not here to talk about someone's usage of grammar or mental health or verbiage. I just want to know. Or critical thinking. Like, that's not my job. I'm just here to paraphrase. But I just want to understand. Right. I have to say this part of the article, because this is the part that I thought was so interesting. She says, and again, this is paraphrasing from the Reuters article, the man's right to pester a woman was an essential part of sexual freedom, they said in an open letter describing the campaign as Puritanism.
What are you saying to me? Is this real?
So, according to Catherine Deneuve, when those men pestered you at your job, that was just them exercising sexual freedom, and your response was puritanical. What say you?
I say lots of things, Catherine.
Say them nicely. We're still live. This is not pre-recorded. I cannot beep you out. So, por favor.
I need a moment.
You take a moment. Take as much time as you need.
And the other 99 people on that.
Right. Take a moment for each of them. We'll be back in 2 hours after Dr. Nikki has recovered from this.
That is so absurd to me. Like, it feels satirical. It feels like a Saturday Night Live skit. That's how absurd that sounds.
Right. I read through the article like 2 or 3 times, and I almost wasn't going to bring it up. But I think that if we have a conversation that isn't balanced, and we don't acknowledge the fact that there are women who do not believe in the Me Too movement. For example, what's her name? God, I forgot the actor's name. She played Blossom.
Oh, Mayim Bialik.
Thank you. Remember, she wrote an article. Was it? 6 months ago.
I'm not getting this yet.
Right, saying that, as an unattractive woman, she didn't have to deal with it. I'm not giving her my
time. Stop talking about it. So let me say this. Here's what I want to say to that. So let me go back. I'm trying to order my thoughts around this, because once I have an emotional reaction to something, it takes me a while to get back to my more elevated and articulate frame of thinking.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard the breakdown of a doctor. Did you hear it?
What I say to that is that, I'm saddened. I'm saddened because I think that it's a clearly, from me, from the position I sit in, is a clearly unenlightened framework that she's taking on this. I think it's an overly simplistic and a very patriarchal and heterosexist perspective that she's taking on this. So one part is that I still go back to my overarching definition of sexism and how it plays out. And what I would say is that the socialization that she's experiencing, again, I've never lived in France. I don't know what sexism and gender inequality looks like in France. But what I would argue is, from a theoretical framework, sexism only works, any system of oppression only works if both the dominant party and the targeted party in the system both buy into the same belief. Right. So in that idea, she's obviously bought into this idea around masculine dominance, and in specific around masculine sexual dominance, which I think is short-sighted from not only a gender perspective. I think it's short-sighted from a sexual orientation perspective, and I think it's also short-sighted from just a sexuality perspective. And that's the other piece that I would bring in there. That also sounds to me very much like a very distorted perspective around mating and sexuality and how courtship happens. I think a lot of people buy into this, right? That the men are supposed to be the more dominant aggressor, this alpha male thing, and that if women aren't pursued by the man, then there's some imbalance in the relationship. And a lot of people really believe and buy into that. And I just think that the snippets of that statement that you share with me reinforce that. What makes that problematic is that if you try to overlay that in terms of institutional and societal beliefs, then that means I have to adhere to that. And I don't adhere to that at all. Therefore, it's problematic.
And I just want to say this. I wanted to get your response to that before I read this very last part. And that is, there's an author, Guillaume Bigot, who has written about the Weinstein fallout in France. And what he's quoted as saying is, France is a country of men who love women. This was in an article he did with the Associated Press. You're understanding how political correctness and politics and culture and society, how all of these things overlap. When I read the Catherine Deneuve letter, well, actually, and again, it was 99 other women who, from France who also said this, I saw almost a rejection of a political movement, or a movement they attributed to being political, and not a social movement, and not a correction of historical wrongs. These are people who one could call conservative or nationalist, if we're going to use those types of terms, who are okay with the status quo, because even though they have perhaps been affected by it adversely, they're complicit in that. And
I definitely agree with that. And so I'm recognizing that we only have 2 minutes left, probably a minute and some change. You have the official timer over there.
We started a bit late. We have about what time that is. But go ahead, say what you need to say.
Let me end right. I don't know what that is. To that point, I want to end with this quote from Frederick Douglass. Have you heard of him? He's been doing a lot of wonderful things these days. Have you heard of him? One of the
people they've been talking about lately? He's getting a lot of press, I think, on CNN, MSNBC. Yeah, I heard about him. Yeah.
That Frederick Douglass. This quote is from him from 1857, and it's one of kind of my personal mantras. That's probably not the right word because it's long. It's too long to be a mantra, but it's maybe a personal creed that I live by. And Frederick Douglass said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or with both." That, for me, is why this issue around how sexual harassment shows up, how gender inequality facilitates sexual harassment shows up in public spaces, in the places that aren't necessarily monitored or bounded by legal means, but in our everyday commonplace interactions becomes so important, because it's those most minute and quiet spaces in which we have to start to really do the work of disentangling and dismantling.
Because it's so, it's still so prevalent today. So
it's so on point, right?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. So I will end with some questions for you and our listeners to ponder. Because what I know to be true is that it will take all people, all of us, to give voice, to advocate, to serve as allies, and build coalitions to make change happen. So the questions I leave you with are, how do you talk to your children or children that are in your lives about gender and gender equality? How do you talk to your children or children that are in your lives about healthy sexuality? How do you talk to your children or children that are in your lives about being empowered to stand up for themselves and others? The last question that I ask you to sit with is, how do you model those things for them?
Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our season 2 premiere of Doopy Deep with Dr. Nikki.
What?
Dr. Nikki, thank you so much. We're so excited to have you back. We're looking forward to next week. Please tell them where they can find you on social media.
You can find me. Let me mind my manners. Thank you for having me back. I'm so excited. I think today was a really good show and really good place to start the conversation. And you can find me on social media at Twitter at Dr. Nikki Knows. You can find me on Facebook at Dr. Nikki Knows as well. And if you are in the Houston area and are looking for psychological services, you can find my profile on Psychology Today as well. We would love for you to stay in contact with us to continue the conversation. You can either post questions on the Spreaker website, or you can tweet me at Dr. Nikki Knows, or post a comment under the show tag on my Facebook page at Dr. Nikki Knows. And we will see you next Friday, January 16th. I think that's next Friday.
I think that's a Tuesday.
It is. That is. You know why? Because it's the 19th. You know what? The 16th is the first day of class.
I was just going to say, did you go back to the 1857 calendar? You're looking at Frederick Douglass's calendar.
Guys. We will be back January 19th, the next Friday at same time, same place. And next week, we're going to push the conversation forward. We're going to talk about kind of what other things women are doing, how women are empowered, and how can we move, what is empowerment, and how can you elevate your own sense of empowerment and enact your own sense of empowerment.
Perfect. Dr. Nikki, thank you so much. I just want to leave everyone today with a little bit of the Oprah Winfrey speech. We're going to return to this, and I think this is a great way to end. Thank you, Dr. Nikki. We will see you next week.
A name I know, and I think you should know too. In 1944, Reese Taylor was a young wife and a mother. She was just walking home from a church service she'd attended in Abbeville, Alabama, when she was abducted by 6 armed white men, raped and left blindfolded by those men. But their time is up.